I think One Nation's been the only consistent political party for the last 20 years.
They're not talking about you. All right. Well, let me tell you, One Nation is talking about you.
It's like the media's run away from One Nation. They're too scared to ask us any questions, mainly because we're straight talkers and we've got the answers.
This is like a call to arms. You guys need to start making the real decisions and who you're going to vote for.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the ExCandidates. My name is Stephen Tripp, and as always, I'm joined by Adam Zahra. How you going, Adam?
Very good, Stephen. How you going?
I'm pretty good, and we are going to dive right into the Victorian election coming up next month. It's only a few weeks away, so we thought we'd start having some of the One Nation Victorian candidates on. And we're going to start off with the number one. He was the number one Senate candidate in the federal election. He's running again for the state election. It's Warren Pickering. How are you tonight, Warren?
Fantastic. And thank you, Team New South Wales.
Oh,
No problem.
Good to have you on board. That's it's always good to have fellow One Nationers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I absolutely love it. And my candidates, the rest of the Team Victoria, are actually looking forward to getting on and getting into a bit of an interview process, especially those that haven't done this before. So,
yeah,
exciting to see how they go.
That's what this is all about. So, you want to just tell us a bit about where you guys are at with One Nation and your campaign in Victoria?
Well, maybe we should ask him a little bit about himself first.
Okay.
Bit about
Give us a
me.
bit of a background, mate.
Yeah.
So I was obviously the primary Senate candidate in the build-up to the Fed for Victoria. My personal background, I'm from Gippsland, Victoria. I grew up in potato country. I was a bricklayer for 13 years. At 29 years old, I went off and joined the Army as a combat engineer, and I posted to North Queensland. Saw active deployments, 7, 8 different countries, both combat zones and humanitarian aid, disaster relief operations on home soil as well. Discharged full-time service 3 years ago, became an active reservist and stayed on in North Queensland at the time and gained employment with BHP in Central Queensland coal mining industry. I'm a single father. I had a daughter at the time. She was about 16 at that time. When COVID kicked in, both my parents nor my family still in Victoria. They both respectively had illnesses. I wasn't able to get down to Victoria for obvious reasons to visit them in their time of need. And that was pretty tough for me, and it was tough for my daughter. It was tough on the family. So it was a bit of a no-brainer for me that once I was going to have the opportunity to move back down, that I would. And while I was already having these thoughts, BHP decided to mandate the COVID-19 vaccination, at which point I publicly and vocally conveyed my discontent. Pulled into the office, had a discussion with the mine manager, and he understood my discontent. I understand it, and conveyed my thoughts to him that, look, I understand it's not the company, it's the company bending to, contrary to what we're told, to state and federal pressure. They didn't want to lose 10% of their workforce, so I don't hold them responsible. They were doing what they felt they needed to do. However, it was disheartening that the pushback came from the lowest of the low in the maintenance floor shed. Nobody looking after their jobs any higher had any pushback. They let it get all the way down to us before there was pushback. Anyway, that's beside the point.
Were you the only one?
Sorry?
Were you the only one that was pushing back?
No, there was quite a few of us. Yeah, there's quite a few of us that were stood down as a result. There's actually a lot. But on my site specifically, I'd say there was probably 5% people. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. However, that just re-enhanced my resolve to get down to Victoria. So as soon as my daughter finished year 12, the end of last year, lockdown was lifted. Bang, we just packed up our house, rented that out, jumped in the car and moved back to sunny Victoria. So here we are. I moved down with the intention of engaging One Nation. I've always been a One Nation supporter, and I've always voted One Nation my whole adult life. So as soon as I got down, engaged with the intention of running, just lower house at the federal level, and was shortlisted and asked if I wanted to run on the Senate ticket. So absolutely, challenge, you got to embrace it, don't you?
Absolutely.
And it was a result of the lockdowns and everything that motivated you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But not only that, a number of other things. Obviously, a lot of people are surprised when they realise I have an adult child. But, I'll be 40 next week myself. And I did start early. But I think over that time, I think that's given me a different insight to a lot of people. Because, I'm young enough that I do have a finger on the collective pulse. And I think you guys are much the same generation. And I think we've watched things change dramatically within our adult lives. And we are now at an age where not enough people our age are paying attention or getting into politics or educating themselves on the governance of our great country. And the reality is we are the dead centre age demographic of the GDP winning, breadwinners of this country. It is absolutely our responsibility to carry the baton for the next 25 years. It really is.
It's like a Generation X thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I think we're Zennials. I call us Zennials. So I'm currently writing a book at the moment too, which is interesting. But I was just recently writing on the intergenerational biases between all of the generations from the last 100 years. But it's interesting, those of us sort of born between 78 and about 85, we don't necessarily fit within the parameters of millennials or Gen X. So we're a crossover. We are the last generation to be raised in an analog world and the first to grow up into a digital world. And I think as a result of that, we have an inherent responsibility to slow things down a little or maybe turn the clock back a little because the generations behind us, they have no context with which to measure that. They don't remember the world before, whereas we do. But like I said, so because I started young, I was exposed to a lot of concepts at a young age. I bought my first house at 21. I was running a business early, putting kids through the public school system by my mid-20s and things like that. So, I've done all these things for a long time and I've watched the slow degradation of our society and our systems. And we are, make no mistake, we're a civilization in decline in the modern Western world. I genuinely believe that. And I also believe that we are on the precipice of social and economic collapse. And it's not through any deliberate measures, I don't believe. While there is certain things that have been perpetuated in the name of profit and whatnot, I genuinely believe this is just a matter of, Australians being asleep at the wheel to some extent. We need to wake up.
Yeah, I agree. With just touching on that that intergenerational gap that you're talking about, I've also felt the same way because I actually get on really, really well with like the 60-year-old plus demographic.
Yeah, likewise.
So I can go there. Like I can go to a pub. I can sit down and have a beer with the old fellas and just have a chat and just get on with them and no drama. And I understand everything they're talking about. Then when I go to but I'm young enough to understand a little bit more. Like actually, I find it easier to get on with the older guys personally, just from probably my upbringing. But what happens is with the younger generation, I can still, be. Not to say this is making me not hip, but I can be hip with them too. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's just to say that just blows everything out of the water. But what I'm saying is like, so I can get like I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and I can hang out with her and get along with her just as easily as I can
definitely resonate with that as well. My daughter and I, we tag each other. She's 18, but we tag each other and stuff all the time. It's just mutually hilarious.
That's right. And then you just ask.
All you have to do is say that. I find I was a little bit biased in certain regards when I joined defence, being from a country background and whatnot. Like I'd spent a lot of time working cities when I was bricklayer the first time. I worked high rise and things like that. So I worked in Melbourne and whatnot. But I did carry a little bit of bias into the army. Just with regard to the generations, and I thought, this young generation, they got actually nothing to offer. They don't, I did feed them a little bit of tongue in cheek. Bloody millennials, you got nothing. And a lot of them surprised me. There was, especially from regional areas, there was a lot joining the army with old world values, and there still is. And I sort of was forced to eat a bit of humble pie. There is some fantastic people, very relatable people from that generation that have a lot in common with us. I think what's very vastly different from them to us is that their style of learning, because of the way they were raised, their style of learning is short and fast. Yeah.
And it's a brilliant observation that you've come up with, though.
Mate, I've got a lot of theories on a lot of things. But
we are the generation that have a foot in both camps because in one way it feels like Facebook has been around forever. But I still remember meeting your mate in the city and you would have to call him on the landline and say, hey, I'll meet you at town hall, in the city at this time. And if he didn't rock up, you'd wait, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. And if he wasn't there, you'd have to go home and wait for him to call you at the end and say, hey, I was caught up or whatever, or I was there, you didn't see me or something. Now we have mobile phones and you can contact people in 100 different ways. But we know what it's like. What was that?
It makes you wonder how we survived. It's interesting. So when I moved down late last year, my daughter waited until the end of the year because she obviously had her license. So her and a friend had driven down themselves. And I thought, it was absolutely fine. She's very dependable and responsible. But I thought, as a parent, she's driving 2,500 kilometres across the continent. Imagine doing that without a mobile phone, being a parent, having your 18-year-old do that. It'd be in panic mode, wouldn't it? Panic stations. I think, and in saying that, I think you've got to respect what our parents tolerated. I mean, I didn't speak to my parents for days or weeks on end at that age. I'd just disappear in my car and come back 3 weeks later.
I lived in my car. I did the same thing. I got my license, literally had my whole wardrobe in the boot. And I would just I'd wake up, say Monday morning, I'd go to work. And then maybe on a Friday night I'd come home, shower, get ready, go out with my mates, and then I'd very rarely be at home. I was just always in the car. It was kind of I never rang them. I never spoke to them. As long as I showed up once a week, they were kind of like, well, he's alive, and that was it.
Swag, surfboard, bag of clothes in the back of the ute, go on.
Hey, finished work at 2:00, straight down Appin Road, down the beach. That's where I went. I lived down there. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But back on the learning thing with the kids too, I agree with you. They're very visual, and it's all information coming in very quick. And with the younger generation, it's about, you can see with things like, which I don't particularly agree with, but like Afterpay and all those kind of payment things. They want a $500 pair, or they want a $500 pair of shoes, which drives you nuts. And then what happens is they don't want to wait for them. Whereas we would put them on lay-by, and then every week you would put, 20, 30, $50 on it and just kind of pay it off and get them. That doesn't happen these days. So what happens is now you go on credit, you get them now and then you pay it off later. It's kind of, the whole shift has changed.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. And in some of my research for this book, I have come across a lot of that too. There is definitely, as I said, with the old world values, I think we're much more conservative as a generation. They are a lot more confident, blindly confident. And I think to some extent it's problematic. You don't see a lot of them buying, a crappy old weatherboard house dirt cheap as their first house and then living in that for 5 years while they drive a 10-year-old car and then slowly progressing. You see a lot more. And this is, part society's fault. We've encouraged this largely being such a consumerist nation. You see a lot of that now. They'll get into a partnership and the first house they'll buy will be one they built brand new. I know friends in regional areas now, people I work with that are from the generation behind it, within 5 years of being in the workforce, they owe the bank $1 million. They got $250,000, a Land Cruiser ute and an SUV and owe $1 million for a house in a regional area. And that's enormously problematic. I mean, we've lived an uncharacteristically good economic 20 years, and I don't think they've had any exposure to that. Whereas when we were kids, we watched our parents struggle through the last recession of the 80s and whatnot, the recession we have to have.
Yeah, that was
I think as a result, we were forced to learn a little bit about basic economics and things like that, whereas their generation sort of hasn't. And we have to assume some responsibility for that. And I'm not saying it's all of them. There's plenty of people from our generation that have got no idea either, as I'm sure you guys established in the build-up to the Fed as well. And it's sad. It's hard to believe that's not been deliberately perpetuated. When they removed things like, political science in high school in the 80s, we didn't study that. It was just something we knew we probably needed to take an interest in. But there's definitely a problem there. Yeah. But they do. They think fast. They think faster than us. I agree with that also. Yeah. I think if we can carry the baton for the next 10 to 15 years and steer this ship off the precipice of social and economic collapse, they will be then better situated than us to carry it through the next 10 to 15 years. And we'll be able to hand over the reins, I believe. I think there's a problem with having the older generations at this current pivotal time in Western history. I think there's a problem with having the older generation in control of things. We need a few more people from our generation to get involved, and a few of those as well. But yeah, I think 15 years from now we'll be done too, and it'll be their turn completely.
Well, we've spoken to that with some of our leaders in state, and that's what we I know Stephen and I and Rebecca, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. We that's what we said to them. We said, like, teach us what you know, give us the history, because I'll 100 times way more in tune with the way all that kind of system works. I mean, they built the system through the years, through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Teach us what you know. Yeah, right. So teach us what you know and how the game works, and then what happens is we can then bring our enthusiasm to it and try to bridge, like what you're saying. I mean, that gap between the new generation that's coming through. So the people after us who are going to take over the reins, and no matter what, we aren't going to live forever. So what happens is eventually it's going to have to pass on. And I think One Nation, especially One Nation, I think they've coming to the realization that it can't always be about Pauline and Malcolm and Mark Latham and Rod Roberts. We've got Sarah Game in South Australia. She's like our age, like in our bracket. Well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so and she's really, really
got I actually believe One Nation's ahead of the game here than any other, not just Conservative Party, but ahead of everyone in this game. You don't see too many of the majors running people from our age demographic either, and I think that's potentially problematic for their future. Like I said, I think One Nation is very much in front of the game here. One Nation has identified that there's a niche here. Like, I discussed this with Senator Hanson when she was down in the build-up to the Fed, and she said that. She asked me, she goes, well, do you think you're a bit young? And I said, look, I kind of do. It was something I had a loose outside interest and thought I might get into in another 10 years. It wasn't something, but obviously, the current social and economic situation has sort of forced this upon us. And I think, that's also to our benefit too, because none of us intended to be politicians here and now, and we won't be. We will be genuine representatives of the communities. We looked left and right for someone to get behind, couldn't find anyone, went, it looks like it's me, I'll have a go. But this is what I kind of discussed this with Pauline, and she said, well, you're not too young at all. She said, well, she reminded me that, she was 39, 40 the first time she got into it. I thought, she makes a very valid point. Whereas, contrary to her story, she's lucky enough to have a platform for us to get straight on board with, that already has traction, that already has a reputation for being outspoken and being the representative of working class Australia, which is, exactly what we intend to be.
And if you look at Eminem, sorry, Stephen, she's the Eminem of the political world in Australia. Like, she's paved the way. She just paved the way. In the last 50 years. Yeah, absolutely paved the way. And the party dragged through the mud and is still going strong.
Yeah, and she was thrust into it just like we have been. Like, she was just running for a seat, and then all of a sudden she had all this massive attention on her, and she had to learn quickly on her feet. And everyone makes mistakes, and everyone. But I think under all the pressure that she went through, she did incredibly well to be able to have a party 25 years later with attracting all these people.
And there's not too many people out there in this day and age that have got that level of tenacity to endure what she endured with her political career and still be standing strong. And look at the legacy she's built now. One Nation. It's for me, it's the last true bastion of conservative values in this country.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean. You look at Liberals have gone so far away from their conservative base. I'm sure it's the same up there in New South Wales, that they are coming to us in droves, just looking for genuine conservative leadership. And a lot of people, the ones that did actually go and educate themselves in the build-up to the Fed, that used to consider One Nation a right-leaning party or a right-wing party, have gone out and actually educated themselves and had a look at our federal policy. And they realise the same. We are the last bastion of true conservatism in the country, and they've thrown their weight behind us enormously down here, and no doubt up there as well.
Well, when you say, it's funny that you say that, because they do call you right-wing extremists, and then you think about it. But we haven't changed. We've been saying the same things and had the same kind of policies, and it's about Australia, family, and Australian values and all that. But when the scales slid so far to the left, all of a sudden it leaves you hanging out in the right. But it's actually not. We haven't changed. It's actually the centre left us.
Haven't they? The goalposts have left and right. The arcs have been moved.
That's exactly right.
Stayed where it was. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment entirely. Yeah,
100%. And we've had, and I was talking to somebody actually the other day. He's actually a Greens member. Greens. He's an old dude too. He was. He would have been about, like, he was retired, so he's over 65, probably close to 70. Lovely man, like, great. And he goes, and he's from around the MacArthur electorate when I was running in Fed. And he goes, he's seen I got this big sign on the side of my van and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, I heard you talking on the phone because I was just talking to somebody about something. And he goes, I'm with the Greens. And I'm like, oh, really? And he goes, yeah, because actually the area that he's in is quite liberal. And I'm like, oh, okay, no worries. And then he's going, but I've had to leave them. He goes, I've been a member of the Greens for, over 10 years or more than that. And he goes, I was having let my membership lapse. And he goes, and I said, oh, well, why did you do that? And he goes, well, the person who runs it, their RC chair or whatever system they have, rang him. And he goes, I've looked at your policies and you've got a whole page of policies, and heart on chest, I could say that I agreed with only 2 of those policies that you've got.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm a Greens because I care about koalas and I care about the animals and I want to save the planet. I'm not interested in gender fluidity and trans ideology and all these other things that you're pushing. And obviously, and funnily enough, the person who I actually know I don't know personally, but I've dealt with the person who he was talking to, who happened to be a trans person. Basically just went off at him on the phone. Like, he was absolutely astounded.
Instantly triggered, regardless of addressing his genuine concerns and completely reasonable concerns. Was triggered instead. Yeah, that's no good.
And first thing I said to him, I said, I think you need to have a look at the One Nation policies because you're very into it and you understand politics. And I said, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised in our values and our policies because we're not about destroying the earth. We're actually conservatives. Conservatives as a whole.
That's a common misconception. A lot of people they want to stereotype you, and that's not deliberate. That's a part of human instinct. That's a primal instinct with regard to survival. We stereotype and we do things, and people say, "Oh, no, I don't judge." Well, yes, you do. It's natural human instinct. It's what we do. But the reality is, a lot of people misinterpret that. They say, "Well, you're behind coal, so you want to keep petrol engines and all these things." They misinterpret that for being, anti-ecology. Anti-natural habitat. That's not the case at all. Absolutely not at all. And it's the same down here with another problem we face in Victoria with the logging industry being absolutely decimated. And look, and that encapsulates the same areas they're trying to close for the coal industry. So you can only imagine the detrimental impacts that would have on the economy in those regions. No more timber milling and tree felling, and also no more coal. Now, we are still pro-ecology. We are still pro-natural habitat, absolutely. But the reality is with that timber resource, managed correctly, it's the most renewable resource building material we have on the planet, Yeah.
It grows out of the ground. What more can you do?
It literally grows on trees. And if the resource is managed properly, but you can't have these people, especially the Greens, saying, well, let's get rid of the logging industry completely. Like we manage properly. Yeah, it's a monocrop, but it's left there for 50 years. So it develops undergrowth and creates habitat for other creatures and things like that. And the next one is planted before that one is decimated. So you do get that one for one. It's not a perfect solution, but it is what it is. You can't have these like green policies that are just woke virtual signalling BS, for want of a better word, that just ban it completely, because then you end up with unregulated timber coming in from foreign countries like Papua New Guinea and places like that. You're just decimating forests. You're just removing the problem to another geographic location somewhere else on the globe, and somebody else is profiting, and it's not getting managed correctly the way that we know we can manage it responsibly here.
Bringing in parasites, bringing in wood mites, and all these other things that can come in from that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We can grow it here. Like that, people don't realise that the timber that comes in. You can't poison or treat every log. There's going to be survival of insects. There's going to be survival of whatever comes over from overseas. And those little. What happens if there's some? This is just just speculation, but like a rare tick some tick comes over on the wood, and it goes into our bushland, and then all of a sudden, all of our animals were affected by this parasite that really didn't need to come here.
Yeah, we have so much evidence of ecological disasters being caused in this country in the last 200 years as a result of things like that, natural pests.
Cane toads.
That get here and don't have a natural predator, and they become the dominant species in certain habitats.
That's right.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of predators, looking down at looking at Victoria from outside, we can't get over this Dan Andrews guy, and apparently he's popular and he's going to get re-elected.
Look, I don't believe he's popular at all.
How can he be?
Absolute farce. There's a lot of people report that, but it doesn't matter who you go and speak to. And I remain unbiased in a lot of ways. I keep a low profile. A lot of people don't know who I am, and I just ingratiate myself into circles without saying who I am, just because that's the best way to gauge realistic opinions. Speak to cross sections within your communities before they know who you are, so you're not getting that confirmation bias. And I do that quite a bit. And even the people that used to support him no longer support him. I think, we know the mainstream media is a propaganda machine of the majors, and I think that's all it is, mate. I think it's an absolute farce. There's no way he's got that much support. I know there's no... I can't back it up with evidence, but I know that he's got some great relationships within, construction communities, and I don't know whether there's been some backroom deals or anything that's occurred there. That's purely speculation on my part, but it has been speculated by others. So having said that, there might be a lot of support within the unions, as Labor always has had. But let's be honest, the unions are a dog without teeth these days. They had a genuine opportunity to defend the civil liberties of their members last year, and they didn't do that.
Yeah.
I believe they are self-sucking ice cream, but how much power they still have to contribute to, say, a Dan Andrews or whatnot, who knows? But I think the bigger concern at this point is there's a lot of other minor and independent parties that are specifically targeting Dan Andrews himself. And that's, all right, I understand that. But for me and One Nation, my mission objective is to secure seats for the best representation of Victorians. And, if Dan Andrews or the Labor government lose their seat or lose power as a byproduct of that mission objective, then fantastic. That's excellent. But I think that it's fraught with danger making that your primary objective.
Well, that's because that makes you basically a single policy party. What happens is, whereas One Nation is a party that is ready to take leadership. So if any state in the next course of elections can get the power of, what do you call it? We can get the balance of power. We can definitely, we're strong enough, we've researched enough, we've been involved long enough, and we have the people to actually be a viable option for the public. And that's the difference between the little parties.
That's sort of what sorry to cut in, but that's sort of what I've been pushing to the public as well. The public that sort of want to educate themselves but don't want to have to actively go out and do it, but are interested in what you've got to say. And I try and get behind them and say, all right, look, you're welcome to look at the policies of all the other minor conservative or independents that are in your locality that you think might resonate best with you. But before you go to the polling booth, I'd ask you to consider which of these parties carries enough weight, which of these parties can provide a genuine third-party alternative within our lifetimes. Because I don't believe there is any other conservative or minor party that can. I think we are the only one that can provide that third-party alternative within our lifetimes and Australia-wide. A lot of people would argue that UAP could maybe do that. I beg to differ. I believe Clive is the only driving force behind UAP. And if Clive, hopefully not, but if Clive's health took a turn for the worse, I don't believe anybody would be driving that bus anymore. Ralph Babette is a fantastic addition and he will do great things, but he's carrying a lot of weight. He's basically carrying the whole freedom movement on his shoulders into the federal parliament for Victoria. That is a lot of burden to carry. So we need to get other people up there to help him. But I don't believe UAP can provide what One Nation has, the traction that One Nation has built in all regions. And just some of the feedback I've gotten off the back of the Fed as well. Queenslanders don't trust Clive, as far as I know. from the community I used to live in Townsville while I was posted to North Queensland. So that's already problematic to begin with. Not sure how they feel about him in WA, but the Victorians that educated themselves on preferencing and whatnot in the build-up to the Fed were very disappointed with what he did to a lot of his candidates just prior to the Fed. And as a result, I've had quite a few of them approach me to run for One Nation.
Wow.
And as I said to you guys prior to recording, I have been lucky enough to acquire a couple of those candidates that are very value aligned. I haven't specifically targeted them, and I haven't just taken anybody. We have a small team, but I've made sure we have a very value aligned, dynamic, powerful team. And some of them have got where you never run for UAP again.
Can you tell us where you feel like One Nation will be strongest? Which areas are you targeting?
Yeah, so I'm specifically targeting my home area, which is Eastern Region, which is actually Gippsland. It's a very large constituent. I don't know if you guys know the breakdown. I know a lot of your listeners will be in New South Wales, so I'll break it down a bit. So we have 8 regions for upper house, 5 seats in each, and we have 88 lower house regions. So specifically in Victoria with One Nation, we had some surprising figures off the back of the Fed. However, we also did well in areas we've traditionally done well in federal anyway. But we have had an increase in those areas, even with the influence of parties like UAP and whatnot. So we know we can do well in our regional demographics. So specifically, I'm targeting my Eastern region and Northern region, where Ricky Lee Tyrrell, she's an excellent addition as well. She's ran in 2 federal elections for One Nation now, and she's pretty excited to get going for state also. So we're specifically targeting and expecting to do well in those, and I'm trying still at this stage, still interviewing lower house candidates to not support, but to complement those upper house bids. However, I can't in good conscience run candidates everywhere, expect them to cough up their time and money and hard-earned in areas where we don't think they can do well. But we still want to give every Victorian the opportunities to vote for One Nation. So I have got, fantastic value-aligned people to run in all upper house seats, as we need to anyway with regard to preferencing in Victoria. I'm not sure if you're familiar how it works. It's a bit of a complicated process, and that's I'd say it's something of a subversion of the democratic process, but it is what it is, and we just have to work within the parameters of what it gives us. But mind you, all these people, they're not paper candidates. They are real people, and they do intend to represent as expected of a One Nation representative if they are lucky enough to secure a full quota point in any of those constituents.
We can spend a little bit of time on that because the Victorian system is completely different to the federal system and the New South Wales system where...
Well, it's the same as the federal system was in 2014.
Yeah, okay.
And apparently that was changed for obvious reasons, that it does feel like a bit of a subversion of the democratic process. And this is why I urge every Victorian to go out there and educate themselves on this system. You no longer carry the preference. You vote for the party that you'd like to win, and your party, you are then entrusting that party with carrying your preference into the election. So, as One Nation, if you vote for me, I carry your 2, 3, 4, and 5 preference. So you need to know that you're voting for a transparent party with real integrity that is going to share your vote with value-aligned parties and not just somebody who's going to get you over the line. You understand? It's complex, but that's how a lot of people have heard of the preference whisperer, and that's how Glenn Drury works. He is the preference whisperer, and I don't love what he does. I believe it is a subversion of the democratic process, but the reality is he's not breaking any laws, and he's been successful in doing that for a long time. So I've spent a bit of time trying to understand how he does his vote harvesting and how exactly that works. And yeah, like I said, it's not illegal, but it's not impossible to mitigate against either. We have seen some people get into positions of power. It seems to be a 1-for-1. You get somebody from the right or conservative and someone from the left and then someone from the right. So everybody seems to rule each other out. And that's where, for me, it's not really an accurate representation of what the community have voted for and what the people wish to be represented by in Parliament. So, yeah, hopefully if we can secure a seat or two in this state election, we can put forward provisions to close that door behind us, because I don't believe we should be facing another election. after this one that still utilises this process. There was a reason they abandoned it after the 2014 federal, and I believe Victoria's got to do the same.
Very good.
We
We'll
just
hold you to that. If you get a seat, we'll hold you to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, absolutely. Hey, and this is what I was talking about before with regard to people from our generation as well. We're not intending to be politics forever. We secure seats. I think a lot of people get there with good intentions, and then they realise, well, I may have to look after this seat. So, you know what? I won't close the door. I won't ruffle any feathers, and I won't rock the boat because I need to re-secure this. You need to be diplomatic, and you're going to need to make certain concessions within Parliament to get your bills passed. That's an obvious. But I don't care about getting re-elected. I can tell you right now, before I'm even elected, I don't give a stuff. I'm more interested in getting the best for Victorians. And if that means I have to get in, ruffle feathers and rock boats and then never get another look in thereafter, then so be it. I believe, like I said, we're in a situation at the moment of social and economic collapse. We're on the precipice and somebody needs to do something. And you can't make everybody happy. If we please everybody, you're going to get nothing done. So there'll be certain things that I intend to do that may be viewed as unpopular. But I believe that they're in the best interest of tightening the belt so that we can hand over, potentially a budget that's not so far in the red for the next generation. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Victoria's budget in the last 2 years has blown out, and we are now equal to the debt of our 3 states to the north combined. Queensland, New South Wales, SA combined. Victoria state.
Really? Because I know New South Wales is 187 billion net.
That's gross. 115 billion net. Yeah, that's just after Matt King's budget. Yeah.
Small bickies, lads. That's small bickies. Yeah, apparently. Yeah. So it's scary times. I think a lot of people don't realise the implications of that because, like I said, we have had an unprecedented 2 decades of very prosperous times, and a lot of people haven't faced hard times. But the reality is it's going to start biting pretty hard when we have to start paying that debt back. I mean, you look at things that the Andrews government has already started to do to try and recover some of that loss. They've just sold Vic Road. So I don't know what the New South Wales version is. In Queensland Transport, we have Vic Roads down here, so your car registration, whatnot.
That's Service New South Wales.
That was privatised. Yeah, okay. Well, that was privatised and sold by the Andrews government. That is
how can you privatise
a perfect example of selling the cow. Well, I have no idea, but the reality is that is the perfect example of selling the cow. You sell the milk, not the cow. Vic Roads will sit there and generate profit for the next 50 years, 100 years, for eternity. You don't sell the cow. But, it's like a short-term strategy to try and return a budget somewhat closer back. Yeah.
So roughly going to work out, because I know I've just been doing a bit of research. Obviously, I've got a fundraiser coming up soon, so I've been doing a bit of research for some speeches that I'm going to write. But and every person in New South Wales has a debt of $22,000, $750. That's a monkey on your back that you don't even know about it. So that's what we're paying back in interest-free payments, right, for our $187 billion gross debt that we have.
But I'd also add to that you're assuming responsibility for the debt that's carried by everybody that's unemployed and under 18 years old as well. So you got to look at the ratio of adults to children to younger people to unemployed people to people that aren't physically able to work and whatnot. And then you've probably got to add threefold to the weight that every individual is carrying.
So everyone in Victoria, any able-bodied person who's working in Victoria then, who's not on the dole, who's not a child and who's actually working and making an income, paying taxes, could possibly have just a number. I'm not a mathematician. $120,000 invisible debt that they know they're going to have to pay. Right? Imagine if that was paid back. If that was paid back,
let's do a little exercise. I can have a look right now at what the current Victorian debt is. I'll Google that, and we'll divide that by 6.681 million current Victorians. So we'll go. Yeah, Victoria's debt. So this was 10th of December 2021. First headline I found. Victoria's debt set to soar to a record 200 billion. So let's just go off that.
Yeah, do it off that. That's conservative.
Last year, so let's just assume we've hit that. I don't know if this is accurate, so let's just not let this go too public. we'll
No,
have
but
a look.
this is an assumption. All right, we'll do a disclaimer. This is just an assumption off the top of our heads on basic figures we've just found.
Yeah, we're not mathematicians.
No.
We're, yeah.
Which is what
That's what the
Treasury documents usually are anyway, just assumptions.
All right. Now, look, guys, this is going to prove that we're definitely not mathematicians. How many zeros is 2 billion?
9.
I don't know.
9.
I'm trying to do it in the calculator.
9.
9?
Yeah.
All right, let's go with that.
You put me at ease because I'm a lower house. I'll probably be a lower house candidate one day again, and you're an upper house candidate, and you're asking me how many zeros in 2 billion. Beautiful.
Do you know what? But this is a problem we have in this country. We assume that our politicians are, hugely intelligent and capable people, and the reality is they're not. I think people like us, it's better. If you're good at spatial reasoning and you're capable of critical thought, I think you're probably better suited to Parliament than someone that's great with numbers.
Hey, I can run a small business. I can run a small business, keep food on the table, and pay the bills. That's all you need.
That's exactly right. All right. So that 2 billion divided by 6.681 million Victorians is 29.935. So that's saying it's only 29,000 per person.
Yeah, but don't forget he's blown the debt out since he's built all these other he's built all those concentration camps and stuff.
That's true.
So
anyway, well, they're being closed now. They never had the staff to man them. Some of them are being closed with ridiculous figures. They only saw about 2,000 people stay. This is outrageous. But they're both parties are currently out now just making the standard pre-election promises. They're throwing money at hospitals and whatnot. And this is where I was saying I, to a certain extent, may make unpopular decisions if and when I'm elected, because some of rather than just hold them account to their pre-election promises, some of them are great in theory, but I would not hold them account to spending, $6 billion on this hospital unless you're going to have the staff to man said hospital. I wouldn't agree with holding them to their, the $120 billion metro link, because I don't believe we need to tip more investment into inner suburban infrastructure. We need infrastructure in regional areas. I don't know what's happened with you guys, but as a result of Melbourne metro lockdowns, a lot of people have romanticised about the country and have escaped to regional areas to escape those lockdowns and obviously for the country lifestyle. Now, as a result, a lot of these regional areas, as I said earlier, have now skyrocketed, and there's people paying $1 million to live in a 4-bedroom house in a regional area that you could have built for 500 2 years ago. And I think inevitably, while these people are able to work from home, they are inner city professionals. And I think 12 months and 2 years from now, when people get promoted over them because they're still working from home, they're going to naturally gravitate back towards the city centres. And as a result, we're going to have an abundance of empty properties out in these regional areas that are no longer worth what was paid for them. And they won't want to sell them at a huge loss. So I think to encourage people to stay in these regional areas, we need regional infrastructure. Stop tipping $120 billion into over-budget Metrolink projects, underground in Melbourne. Give us road and rail infrastructure, state-building infrastructure projects in these regional areas. And it'll have the dual benefit of providing, the jobs and industry to these regional areas for one, but and supporting these communities that have where they've lived, give them the opportunity to stay employed and stay in the regions. But it'll also alleviate congestion in our, in a metro and suburban areas. And it's just an absolute mistake to continue to blow money the way they are. And what we need right now, more than anything else, I believe, is firm leadership and a steady hand. And you can't do that and keep everybody happy at the same time. And I think this is the way to do it. We need to spend on state building infrastructure in regional areas.
Well, you think about it, if you do that, right? So you have a lot of people who live in the city and they move out into regional areas. Then they're going to have children and they're going to be going through school, right? Not all of us are designed to be in office work. Not all of us are designed to be teachers, doctors, and lawyers. There's going to be trades. If you're building infrastructure out in the regional areas, trains, roads, buses, all that kind of stuff, Australian-made, invest in TAFEs, give the kids the skills who want to go into trade. They can make the stuff, and it's a whole cycle of, you're still keeping people inspired to stay out there. You're still creating infrastructure, and you're teaching the next generation new skills that are going to keep building Australia.
Yeah, you're right, and that goes back to building that microeconomy. You know, that national microeconomy that we've outsourced to the rest of the world, and that's what's causing a lot of our problems with regard to inflation. You know, you look at the plethora of substandard products we have on our shelves these days that are, you know, they're good for one or two uses and you throw them away. And a lot of people want to do the right thing. They want to support Australian, and a lot of other people don't understand the implications of not buying Australian. But that's the reality of that situation. You make it too expensive for Australian manufacturing to own and operate within this country. We've seen in the last 20 years, you know, synonymously Australian companies go overseas with their headquarters, like Briggs & Stratton, Hills Hoist, things like that. You know, and the way to bring all that back is to make sure that we are giving these regions the opportunity to expand, you know, manufacturing and things like
yeah, but that's all right. I get it. So, you know, when you're building your manufacturing, when you're having everything, when you're bringing back everything, Hills Hoist, all those companies can come back. First things first, we all know it's about energy, right? So it has to start with cheaper baseload energy. It's never going to happen with renewables, so we know that. It's not that we're saying to get rid of renewables completely, but we've got to put it into context. Why we're flogging a dead horse? We've seen other countries around the world.
It's interesting you say it like that as well, because I do as well, and no doubt you guys have faced it. A lot of people ask, oh, you know, so you're pro-coal, or you're saying we need to have the nuclear discussion, so you must be anti, you know, green energy at all. Not at all. So I've finished writing Victorian state policy, which I'll go over a few after if you like, but we are encouraging, so it's called the Marinas Link. It's the second interconnector line from Tassie to Loy Yang Power Station in Victoria, just up the road from me, actually. So there's already one in place. Now, that supplements our coal-generated energy through proven efficient green energy, which is produced by hydroelectricity in Tassie. So, you know, we know that works. So if we're looking to supplement it further, why don't we build this second line? You know, it's an infrastructure project, and it shores up our supply for a bit longer. My biggest argument with regard to renewables is, yeah, great, keep researching the technology, but until it can sustain itself in a free market economy without the necessity for government subsidies to remain profitable, it's not yet a viable alternative. It's that simple. You know, if the free market economy can profit from it, fantastic. Let's go. You know, provided that it provides dispatchable baseload power.
Well, you said it so concisely.
Yeah.
You've said it so concisely. You've just encapsulated it exactly. If we can get that message across, the technology is not ready. When it's ready, we'll can do it.
Yeah,
right. But right now,
we want to be able to explore these avenues. But the reality is, until it, you know, is profitable in a free market economy, it's not a viable alternative. It's absolutely not. And you can understand. You can understand, you know, the billionaires that are getting behind it, that throw their money. If they throw all the money that they throw at election campaigns at the technology, it'll probably progress a lot quicker. But the reality is they probably know that we're a long way off them actually being sustainable. So it's easy to tip your money into election campaigns knowing that you will win contracts and government subsidies.
Just quickly, I was just going to say that I think actually, because I'm a pro-nuclear guy, the more and more I've done these podcasts, the more experts I've spoken to and the more research that I've done into it, I think technology in Australia is a forgotten technology. Nuclear is a forgotten technology. If we spend time developing it and setting it up, it leads us into a position of being able to develop other greener energies. You know what I mean? Like you can't run a race with a broken leg. You have to, first of all, fix your base load infrastructure, whether it be coal, whether it be nuclear. If they're so worried about emissions or waste, then nuclear is definitely the answer. Everyone, that's factual. We know that. Okay, we could have spent all these billions of dollars we've spent on wind and solar, getting our baseload power correctly built with nuclear. It uses all our existing transmission lines. And then what happens is from there, we could then develop, then roll out your resources and figure out, well, you know, we can make solar panels work on people's houses. We can give people a battery for their house. And that would then take through the day. Let's use renewable energy, but through night we've got nuclear power to use so that we don't have to rely on one or the other.
Yeah, so that's an excellent point. I hadn't really considered that, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It'll alleviate the burden of the coal-generated energy while they research these other technologies. Absolutely, and we don't need to create an entire new industry that we then are too committed to walk away from, which is what we've done in other areas. But I think the interesting thing about nuclear is that we have some of the most stable geology on the planet to support it.
Yeah.
I commented on Sarah Games' post a couple of days ago saying, well, because she's brought it up too, we have some of the most stable geology on the planet to support nuclear energy. And we also are the most uranium-rich continent on the planet. So while we're not using it, we are still digging it out of the ground and selling it to other countries to use. And this is my same argument with regard to the coal industry. So the coal pit near my place, not too far away from my place, it's got an estimated 500 years worth of supply left in it. And it's the cleanest brown coal on the planet. So whether it's AGL or whoever owns the rights to that moment, whether we stop burning it or not, we are still going to market it and sell it as export. So all we're going to do is start paying more for our own power while still exporting it and creating the same carbon footprint, if that's your problem with it. It's madness. It's madness.
All right, so just as we're winding down, can you just go through the policies that One Nation in Victoria are really going to focus on with the state election?
Yeah, so we've, where are we? Very fancy. One Nation Victorian state
Very
policy.
nice.
Very shiny pamphlets. Here we are. We'll have a quick look at them. So these are our 11 basics. So I'll just brush over the titles of them. So water and agriculture, health, education, fuel, energy, vaccine mandates, housing, governance, transport and state building infrastructure programs, social and economic inclusion, and a big one for us in Victoria, religious freedom. And I know you guys have that up there, obviously. We did very well with a lot of the lobbyist groups in the build-up to the Fed, and we actually didn't expect it. But obviously having that conscience vote as individuals, it's proved fantastic. And obviously having pro-life policy and whatnot has proved very beneficial to the party. And it's great because it's not something that was done in an effort to grab votes or anything like that. It was done from a place of good intention. Yeah. With regard to policy at the moment, I'd say our big ones here, as with everywhere, is likely to be energy and fuel. Now, I've kept these pretty short and sweet because I don't want people to get bogged down in the weeds with them. I want people to have the opportunity to explore them a little bit further, candidate-wise. I want people to be able to make them work for their own constituency because there is slight variations for different areas. So I've basically, we've set these policies up as kind of dot points with the opportunity to elaborate. And in a fast-moving economy that we currently have, anything can happen between now and the actual election. Not making any policy redundant, but if you're too rigid in your policy, you then can't be flexible on it. And if it's already gone to print, you sort of leave yourself with not much room to move. So we've left ourselves a bit of wiggle room in that regard.
Yeah, okay. But if someone wants to go and read those policies, where can they go to find them?
So I'm in the process of, we will be building a Victorian One Nation website, but at the moment I've had head office in Brisbane and the National Secretary try and attach at least a link to onenation.org page. So you should be able to find them very soon by looking into the federal policy. So there will be a link there going up very soon. Yeah, if not, find me on Facebook or Instagram and I will send them to you personally.
That's right. And that's what we got to do. And that's what we do because the people don't realise that we are still an independent small party. We have to make it work. Let's say we are a garage band on the precipice of releasing, what do you call it? I don't know. What's a big band?
An EP. Releasing an EP. Yeah.
An EP to go big. You know what I mean? Like this is where we're at. We are still we're just right there, ready to rock and roll. We've got the songs. We've got the album.
We've written the songs. We're good to go. We're ready to go. We're funding, writing our own, recording our own album at this point. We just need people to listen. That's exactly to it.
That's it.
Yeah, I love it. Good analogy.
And just to finish up, do you think that Dan Andrews and the Victorian government will be held accountable for everything they did during the lockdowns?
That's a tough one. Look, I think inevitably they will one day. I don't necessarily believe that will be in the near future. I think one day it will all come out, but I personally don't think it'll be in the near future. It's also hard to know whether that would be in the short term detrimental to politics or beneficial. I mean, everybody wants to see a bit more transparency and accountability in politics, but the reality is, if those findings are really detrimental, then we have a situation already where there's less public faith in our political representation than any time in recent history, and that could make things significantly worse at this point. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why people like yourself that have just kind of been thrust into this, you don't have any prior political, aspirations. You're just an ordinary person that really, you felt, Adam and I were the same. We felt no option but to stand up and be candidates. I think that's what is really needed. I think that's how the system is meant to work.
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely right. And as I stated earlier as well, I think we're also the kind of people that aren't afraid to rock the boat and ruffle a few feathers because we don't care if we don't get re-elected. We want to get in and make a difference. We want to affect positive change for our communities so we can hand over a healthy, safe, prosperous social and economic future to our children. That's the reality.
Yeah, and I think that's why every one of us
as a result of the system being the way it is, to the point where it seems overly complicated to the everyday person that doesn't want to educate themselves on how our democratic process works, we've allowed a situation where we've been represented by these career politicians, and they don't come from backgrounds like you and I. A lot of them, I don't have a problem with people that are affluent, that have been born to an affluent lifestyle, but we need representation from a full cross-section of the community, and at the moment we don't have that. We have a lot of representation from those affluent communities that were born and raised on a silver spoon, went to private schools, went straight to uni, fell into a safe seat, and have held that safe seat. They definitely do not have a finger on the collective pulse of the working class community. They have no idea how to represent us, and I think we need to show them. Yeah,
100%.
Or they've been in the union movement or something like that.
Well, yeah, and that's a self-sucking ice cream in itself. It requires every dollar of that it generates from its memberships for its own administrative purposes. Yeah. If we're a business that had to make money, we broke 100 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Warren. We've battled through some from Dan Andrews trying to get into our signal and spice it up a bit. So we've battled through. But
thanks,
thank
guys.
you
I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for what you guys are doing. It's fantastic. Give us that opportunity to have a voice, give us a platform. The rest of the Victorian candidates are looking forward to getting on board. As soon as I put it on our signal chat, everyone jumped on, yes. So everyone's going to have a chat to you guys, which is great. It's great.
Yeah, we can't wait to speak to them all and learn who the candidates will be, and it's a very exciting time. So it's going to be a whirlwind time for you guys. We have the same thing coming up in March, but we'll be able to see you guys.
Yeah, well, hopefully
we'll be able to see you guys get into it and give it a good go.
Yeah, good.
And
Awesome.
let us know about your book, the book that you're working on as well.
Yeah, that's a process. That's been a process for about a year and a half now. I got to one point, I ripped it all up and started again, basically. So basically, I'm writing about the fact that there's something inherently wrong with the way we live in modern Western society. It might sound boring to a certain extent, but it's really not. I promise you it's not. I think we need to be able to create dialogue and have these discussions that we've lost the spine for in a public forum, and we need to create that dialogue in a public forum without fear of repercussions.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an interesting process. It's not something I've studied or done previously either. But it's an interesting process. I got to a point about 4 chapters in, and I decided it was way too factual and boring. So I went back to the start and added a bit more personality. And now, from all accounts, apparently it's a lot better reading now, which is great.
Well, that's good.
It's a lot to unpack. It really is. Sorry.
Well, we will look forward to that as well. And when Is it far off? Is it still? Is it?
Oh,
Is it
yeah,
far
mate.
off?
I've been so busy. It'll be another 2 years off, I reckon.
All right. Well, if we're put it this way, if we're on Sky News or something like that, and you release that book, you let us know, and we'll give you a plug. All right.
Yeah. Oh, look, and if I'm an elected politician at the time, I will not be releasing it at all because that's all the world needs.
Yeah.
Only releasing a book. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
Well,
where
thanks
can
for
people
coming.
follow you on social media to keep up to date with your campaign?
So Warren Pickering at One Nation on Facebook, and I think it's warren.pickering.phon on Instagram. You'll find me. Warren Pickering in both. You'll find me.
Okay, fantastic. Well, all the best, and we'll be following you very closely. And good luck. Go get them.
No, thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it, and also, appreciate the support. And go New South Wales.
Yeah. Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks, Warren.
Good on you guys.
See ya.